Welcome, people, and thank you for tuning in. This is the Sports Underground Podcast with Baron Graff.
Do you know how I get up to my game? Do you know?
Only last week, I murdered a rock, injured a stone, hospitalized a brick. I'm so mean, I make medicine sick.
So let's do what we do tonight.
And now, from the Hotbox Studio in Los Angeles, which is literally an 8x10 box in Baron's garage, here's your host, Baron Graff.
Hey, what is happening, folks? It's the Sports Underground. I'm your host, Baron Graff. Got a great show for you tonight. I'm really stoked. In studio, even. Not even a call-in interview. This is a legit in-studio appearance. This guy, you might have heard of him. You might know this guy. If you don't, you will now. He's awesome. This is my buddy Gar, otherwise known as the batting stance guy. Gar, what's happening?
It's a thrill to be in your box.
Now I know because you've done some pretty remarkable stuff. You've been on Letterman, you've made team appearances, but now that you're here, this is kind of, do you feel like you've arrived?
I feel like all of that was preparing me for a time such as now.
It all led up to this moment.
Yes.
In my garage.
Yes.
And some people don't believe me when I say, will you confirm for all of my listeners that we are indeed in a sloppy corner of my garage?
Depending how you feel about where cars are supposed to be parked, this is a garage.
Yes, that's correct. Although the lovely couch.
If not all this stuff was on the floor, I'd say you could park a car in this garage.
Exactly. So, Gar dropped by. We did a quick video. You'll be able to find that on the Facebook fan page, on the YouTube channel. And that was really awesome. So, Gar, you started doing this thing with the batting stances. First of all, how did this whole thing even start?
A while ago, we had a friend, little wiffle ball game in the front yard. So, wiffle ball game in the front yard, bunch of kids, everyone's just kind of hanging out, and the pitcher says, hey, can you imitate Red Sox? And so I say, all right, who do you want? Mo Vaughn, do it. Nomar, do it. Euclid, do it. And then he says, he's laughing, and he says, hey, can I video you? Because I want to show my buddies back in Brookline, Massachusetts.
So he just randomly threw out, can you do the Red Sox?
Yeah.
And you went from there. And
yeah,
so then what happens next?
No
because
business.
I've been jackassing around in my backyard and like, hey, do this, do that. I've never been on Letterman. So how does it go from there to there?
Trust me, it was a surprise to me too, that you haven't been on Letterman. So he's put it on YouTube, and I didn't really know what that was. So he put it on YouTube in order to have his friends be able to see it.
Right.
And then he said, dude, I think Bill Simmons put it on his site because it has a bunch of hits. So I was like, what do you mean a bunch of hits? I don't even know that. So Bill Simmons put it on his site and like, hey, look at this crazy Red Sox fan. He knows everybody in the last 30 years. So it's like, I guess I'm a Red Sox fan. I mean, that's news to me. And so it got a bunch of hits. And then my brother, who's on Broadway and 8 years younger than me, who has a bunch of friends that know how the internet works. 2 weeks later, he and all his buddies start texting me saying like, dude, you're featured right now. Which, of course, means nothing to me. I don't understand what it means. So it ran on the front page of YouTube for a day.
Awesome.
And went from, 18,000 hits to 200,000 hits. And 1,500 comments came in one day. And so that was when we got the idea to do more. Because people started requesting, do the Cardinals. In fact, honestly, the Cardinals were the next team that we did. And so,
awesome.
Do this. And so then we started doing it. And then less than 2 months later, the Twins emailed and said, hey, can you come in tomorrow to do the pregame show?
And what were you doing for a living before this all started?
Oh, I mean, I was just in the backyard waiting for batting stances to really hit. No, in nonprofit, doing nothing in showbiz and
booting around, just earning a living, raising a family,
just coaching my kids' soccer team.
And then all of a sudden it's like, hey, can you come to Minnesota?
Well, no, it was better than that. It was come in tomorrow. Because obviously you live in Minnesota, because I just saw you imitate these videos where you knew all the Twins.
Right.
So I email back and say, actually, I'm not in Minnesota. And I honestly get the response, how do you know who Tim Laudner is? Like, you're clearly about... So what happened was we were trying to shoot the video so it looked like we were just a bunch of guys from Cleveland, like the Indians. And so it worked well enough that
They bought it.
they thought that's when actually that was the day we got the idea of the guy that was shooting, the film said, well, why don't maybe we should have a website.
That's awesome.
And then it's like, well, what should we call it? It's like, I don't know, how about like batting stance guy? I mean, just totally like a 5-year-old naming your dog like that. It should be named Boy Dog. It's
right.
Like, well, come on. How about like Roscoe or something else? No, Boy Dog.
Clearly you have children.
Yeah.
So then it all explodes, and now you've actually got a book out, which you were gracious enough to grace the Hotbox studio with a copy of. It's called A Love Letter to Baseball. This is your book. It's the 50 greatest stances of your lifetime.
Yes.
All broke down with illustrations, explanations. This is a really phenomenal piece. How did the book happen?
Well, it happened when I started making these appearances on television. And on the internet, I was not talking. So most people figured I had a form of a high-functioning disease. So I certainly couldn't interact with women. And so when I started doing these pregame show appearances and we're making some of the hosts laugh and whatnot, then I got approached. The New York Times did a kind of a spread on me, and I got, Simon Schuster said, "Hey, we would like for you to write a book on baseball." And I thought, what? I mean, my professors will be stunned if I'm a published author. And then my partner in crime with all this, Caleb, was like, and he's very Ivy League-ish and prep school. He's like, no, we are writing a book. Let's do it.
Nice. So, this has all been like crazy whirlwind. And when did this all start?
April of 2008 was when that Red Sox video was shot.
So in the last 4 years. So you've seen some pretty crazy. What would you say, like, of all the highlights? I mean, obviously, besides being here at the Sports Underground,
of course.
What would you say is like the biggest moment where it was almost like too surreal for you to even wrap your head around it? Like, whoa.
I think when Adrian Gonzalez told me on the field, hey, we watch your videos in the clubhouse all the time. I've never totally gotten over that moment, because once I understood how the internet worked, I thought the Barons of the world will get it. Like season ticket holders, people that love baseball and they have nostalgia for it and remember that Mark Grace's elbow was crooked when he swung. I got that. I thought the internet allows you to find a bunch of yourselves out there, people that are nerdy just like you or geek out over the same stuff. But it never crossed my mind that players would watch it in the clubhouse.
Well, it's kind of a perfect thing because in baseball, I mean, you've just literally got hours where there's just not a lot to do.
But you don't write your acceptance speech before getting nominated. It's like you don't plan this out.
Of course.
So for me, the highlight has been there's been 12 teams that have literally stuck me in the middle of the team's stretching circle, and then Prince Fielder or who someone will basically kind of MC it and point and have me clown each person on the team. Just go around
him.
Yeah. And as somebody that was really like the last guy on the bench on my high school team, I show up to a park like that having done research on the last 5 guys because they think, I wouldn't know. Honestly, what's funny is now some of them are really good, but the Dodgers a couple years ago, they're all asking, and AJ Ellis is like, well, you don't know me. And I was like, well, yeah, you do. And he's like, how do you know me? Carlos Gonzalez, Mike Morris. There's a bunch of guys that were the 25th guy, and they just figured, I don't know who they are. But I remember how lousy it feels to be the last guy on the bench. So I kind of want to honor him.
You're like an everyman.
I hope, yeah. I'd like to be.
You're like a guy for the guys.
Yes.
Right on. So you got another thing now going with Showtime you were telling me about. What's that? What's the story with that?
Yeah, so I've made some appearances on MLB Network and done spoofs, announcers, pretending to be managers, pretending to be players, recreating old baseball cards. And out of that, some people have liked the ideas enough to want me to advertise for them. And so Showtime last year when the franchise came out, asked if I would do a Giants spoof. So me as Barry Zito, Bruce Bochy, Pablo Sandoval, all the guys. And so it's me doing promo outtakes as them. And so they asked me to do it again, so we just shot it, and it'll air next week. online. I mean, on all sorts of like websites and foxsports.com and all sorts of stuff like that.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's really fun.
Completely different life. Now,
Yeah.
I grew up. I grew up in Missouri. I'm a Whitey Herzog.
Yeah.
St. Louis Cardinals kid. I don't want to put you on the spot. First of all, how many guys do you think you have like in your mental Rolodex where you just remember like those guys, like regardless of when they played? Where do you think you're at?
Well, if it makes you feel better, I don't have an idea. I mean, it's more than 500.
Wow.
Less than 1,000. I don't know. It's probably more or less the starters from the last 30 years of every team. You know, give or take 3 Pirate seasons where I don't know who the second baseman is, but and then probably some bench guys.
Just somewhere, like there's a retired second baseman from the Pirates like crying right now, like he doesn't know who I am.
I was the entertainment at the High A All-Star weekend down in Clearwater, and one of those guys was one of the coaches, and the other players were like, "Dude, he was an All-Star in 1996," and I realized I didn't know the Pirates in '96 because whoever it was like, "Yeah, don't you know?" It wasn't Carlos Guillen. It was like a name that was.
Right.
Jose Guillen?
It was one of those baseball cards you had like 8 of, and you went.
Chico Lean? No, after him, but before, and he was an all-star, and I was like, oh, wow.
So one of my all-time favorites, and this is one I used to emulate, and I really should know the guy's name because I used to do it, but, and I think he played for the Cardinals, I'm not sure, and I hate to put you on the spot, but I seem to remember there was a guy who would literally like grab his left sleeve. I think he was a right, and he would literally like pull his sleeve all the way up, like all the way up his collarbone, like all the way to his neck. Like it almost looked like he was choking out his own shoulder with the sleeve. Do you remember that guy at all? I want to say it was either Tom Bernansky or Andy Van Slyke.
Okay, well for sure Andy Van Slyke tugged up his sleeve.
He did.
Yeah, I mean he's a lefty, so he definitely tugged up his sleeve.
It felt like it was way up there, though.
Will Clark was way up there, but Andy Van Slyke and Bernansky a little. The thing is that Bernansky's mustache often would overshadow anything he was doing.
Tough to see what else is going on.
Yeah,
because that was glorious. That mustache. I feel like we're kind of coming back. The kid Derek Holland for the Rangers.
Yeah, for sure.
We're kind of coming back with the whole mustache thing, and then you got other guys like your guy Brian Wilson up in San Francisco, just
yes,
growing the ZZ Top beard. Would you grow up there? Are you not a Giants fan?
Oh, who knows? I definitely grew up.
Or are you an Oakland A's fan?
You know, for some reason, I loved the Minnesota Twins growing up.
Uh-oh.
So God bless your '87 Cardinals, but for some reason, I fell in love with the Kent Herbeck Twins.
Oh my God.
And
this you're really cutting me deep.
I know.
Because I remember the '87 series and like Kent Herbeck's like laying down on the ground to catch ground outs, and I'm like, dude, you don't have to show off. And I was injured so deeply by this. This is a true story. A couple of years back, I was playing softball or whatever. I had on my Cardinals hat. We're done playing softball. I roll up into the 7-Eleven and grabbing a water or whatever, and the clerk's got on his Twins hat. And this was I'll just say this was a fresh wound when it happened. This guy is selling me my water or whatever, and he goes, "Hey, so 87 series, huh?" Just like that, and it just. I wasn't in the mood to hear it, so I was like, yeah, well, Ozzie Smith's in the Hall of Fame, and Kirby Puckett's dead. True story. That's what I went with. Because I like to just end the argument and walk away. Now, you might say, hey, he works at 7-Eleven. That's not very fair.
Yeah.
But Kirby Puckett actually had a pretty cool stance.
He did. The bat would spring off his left shoulder.
Right.
So he had a pretty good dismount.
Awesome dismount.
But he was so pint-sized that when in my lankier stage, it's a little difficult to recreate.
Well, he's pretty rotund in the middle too.
Yeah.
Even in his leanest years, he was not. He was built like a fireman.
I'm surprised you didn't go with the. All right, Mr. Twins fan. Who was their third starter in that '87 series? And if he said Les Straker, you'd say, "Oh, okay, yeah, no, we lost you." But listen, we had DeReeson playing first. We had Lindemann and right. If we had Jack Clark or if we had Terry Pendleton in '87, we would have won. You could have said,
I could have.
I mean, we went 7 games anyway.
I could have. I'm far more. I'm just far more of a vicious human being. And the bad part was this was literally like maybe a year, maybe a year. Yeah, that was bad. That might be the first time I've told that story in public to anyone.
Yeah, and it's safe here.
But this is a good environment to
airways.
tell it in. Yeah, because you can't beat me. You could beat me to death for that.
You're in your garage, which is safe.
And I know where all the sharp things are in the garage.
And I guess you could edit out the most demeaning parts of the story.
Or I could bleep it. I could do that.
Oh, that's true.
Because then I don't have to worry about content.
But this had definitely happened before you had just won in.
Oh yeah. No, this was I think this was maybe circa, I don't know, whenever Kirby Puckett passed. It was right around then.
Yeah.
It was, I remember like walking out and being like, that might have been too soon.
Yeah. What was his reaction?
He was stunned. He looked like I had slapped him with a hammer.
Yeah.
It was pretty mean. But I was a little hypoglycemic. I didn't really have enough water that day. I ended the argument that way. But you never take away that 87 World Series. They were the better team. I think that's why I went with it, was because I knew I had no leg to stand on.
I don't know. I mean, the Twins were outscored during the regular season. Most World Series champions aren't outscored during the regular season. I think their ERA was, I mean, they were really not a good team. They just they played in a weak division. They got incredibly hot against a much better Tigers team, and then just blew through them, and then
the Metrodome was
the whole Cardinals all fell apart as they were beating the Giants.
I remember like the whole thing was people were complaining about the roof of the Metrodome, like roof of the Metrodome. That's it. It's like, and for me, I'm like a kid. I'm like, oh, so like 2 years ago it's the ump's fault, and now it's the Metrodome. So it's kind of hard. So I was pretty happy when we finally won. Now, are you still a Twins fan?
You know, when Herbeck retired, I turned more into a baseball fan, less of a I hate these guys and I love these guys. And that was about the era when he retired where I started seeing a game in every stadium. And so in my quest to see a game in every stadium, and then clearly trying to do research on every team as I'm now literally interested in every team, I've turned less diehard against certain people and more kind of like rooting for stories. I just did an event at Nats Park, and I've gotten to know Ryan Zimmerman. Both our moms are in wheelchairs stricken with MS. So I've gotten to know more Nats. I'll text with Drew Storen. I've kind of just gotten to know that team and Tyler Clipper, and they're really good dudes. And so because I like the Expos way back in the day, and because the Nats are kind of like under the radar, I started liking them just a couple of years ago.
And they got Bryce Harper. He's a likable guy. They got Strasburg. He's a likable guy.
Yeah. So now it's sort of fun, but that's the team I've sort of liked the most recently.
So now you mentioned, I didn't know that about your mom. I'm really sorry to hear that. My dad actually rides in a charity event every year to raise money for MS.
Really? Wow.
And it's actually funny because one of the guys that I follow on Twitter is a baseball writer in St. Louis, and they just played in
Derek Gould?
Yeah. Just played in the 60-hour. Yeah. So I looked it up.
Yeah.
And the record for the longest continuous wiffle ball game is only 24 hours. I feel like we could break that.
Oh, yeah, we could break that.
Batting Stance Guy, Sports Underground, 25-hour plus wiffle ball game to raise money for MS an MS fundraising of your choice.
Done.
You want to do that?
It's only 24 hours?
That's it. I couldn't believe it. I looked it up. I was like, and I actually had to go on to Guinness and look it up. It's like 10 kids from Wisconsin or Pittsburgh that did it, 24 hours.
You're positive you weren't looking at the Guinness beer website?
I'm pretty sure.
That may have been
that could be the mistake. But I will double check that. But regardless of what was the number you wouldn't have been comfortable with? What if I had said 96 hours? You would have said, that's a little too long.
96 hours is like Army Ranger, tryouts.
Well, it didn't say you couldn't sleep. It just said the game has to keep going. Because that's what they did in the 60-hour softball game. Let's think about this. I say we brainstorm this. I think do a little research.
Not only that, there's a field that's not too far from here. I think it's in Encino.
Yeah.
That's that Fenway Park.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it. Let's work it out.
Strawberry Fields.
Yeah, it sounds perfect. So we'll work it out. So my guest here, thanks for dropping by the show. Gar, the batting stance guy. This is, I know this has been a dream come true for you.
It is.
It's really been something for
It's a
me.
dream.
Thanks so much.
Awesome.
Good to have you, and we'll catch up with you next time.
Thanks, man.
So there you go. Gar, the batting stance guy in studio. And this, of course, is How Do You Want It? Tupac Shakur, 1996. Number 17 song on the Billboard charts. Gotta love Tupac. Even edited Tupac is cool.
Got a brother wanting it so bad I'm about to pass out. Wanna dig you, and I can't even lie about it, baby. Just alleviate your clothes. I'm the fly about it. Catch you at the club. Your hips have got me feeling body pumping quick to me.
This is back when like Casey and JoJo. Oh man, remember that All My Life song, Casey and JoJo? And now remember, don't forget that Casey and JoJo were the C and the Joe in Jodeci. So they're kind of the bookends of Jodeci there. And yeah, I don't know what happened to those middle consonant guys, but Casey and JoJo did okay. So episode number 17 is season number 2, the Dizzy Dean episode of the Sports Underground. Dizzy Dean, legendary St. Louis Cardinals pitcher. Also pitched, I think, for the Cubs for a couple of years after we were done with him. My favorite Dizzy Dean story of all time. Dizzy's brother Paul, he pitched for the Cardinals as well. And Dizzy and Paul were pitching in a doubleheader one day. And Dizzy went out and took a no-hitter into the 8th inning. And then gave up a couple of hits, whatever, went into the clubhouse. And then Paul Dean, goes out and throws a no-hitter in the second stanza of the doubleheader. And when they're interviewing Dizzy Dean in the clubhouse, Dizzy's overheard saying to his brother, "Shucks, Paul, if I'd known you were going to throw a no-hitter, I'd have thrown one too." And that, Dizzy Dean was a man before his time. You got to remember, this guy played for the Gas House Gang Cardinals in the 30s, and his whole thing was like, hey, it's not a problem to talk smack as long as you can back it up. Dizzy Dean was known to say things to rookies like, hey kid, which pitch do you want to strike out on? That was his game. He's a big talker and backed it up. Those Gas House Gang Cardinals, they did some stuff right there. So there you go. There's the song. There's the player. And moving into the second block of the show. First of all, batting stance guy was really cool. If you're not following him on Twitter, you should be doing that. Batting Stance G is his Twitter handle. And he's got a website, battingstanceguy.com. Definitely worth looking at. And he and I did a video that'll be up. That was pretty cool for me. Just to shoot the breeze with a guy like that who cares that much about baseball like I do. That was a pretty cool thing. And a lot of stuff going on with baseball as we're coming into the All-Star week. We got the Home Run Derby coming up. I can't wait for that. And Gar and I discussed extensively the Prince Fielder bat dismount, which that's the one thing I wish they could somehow incorporate home run trots into the Home Run Derby. Like, the Home Run Derby's cool enough. It'd be so much cooler if they could somehow work the trot in there. If it was like gymnastics almost, that it got judged somewhat by style, okay, so you hit the ball 480 feet. You didn't really have enough swagger coming around second base. So you only get a 9.4 on that. Because I have a feeling that once you combined the power of Prince Fielder, the grace of a man that big running around the bases, just lumbering around the bases, plus that extraordinary bat dismount he has, wow. You could be in Nadia Comaneci territory right there. You could be in Perfect 10 territory right there. Other guys can do it, like Pujols. He's got the ability to hit the ball a ton. And he does that bat dismount thing where he throws the bat away. Like suddenly it's like made of kryptonite. Like, get that away from me. But then he just kind of runs around the bases and does that clap at home plate and point to the sky thing. Always dug that. Like, really? Really, Pujols? Really, Sammy Sosa? Really, insert hundreds of baseball players right here? Really? You think God cares if you hit the ball over the wall? I mean, let's be serious, folks. I'm not trying to come down on anybody's belief system, but do you really think God cares if you hit the ball over the wall or not? I like to believe in an omnipotent power of the universe that, a foul out and a home run are the same thing. I like to believe it that way. If you don't, that's cool. We can go forward and agree to disagree without being disagreeable. A guy who was pretty disagreeable with a lot of pitchers in his career had a pretty big moment earlier this week. You remember this guy? They're calling him Big Papi, this David Ortiz guy. Have you heard of him? He has hit the ball over the wall a couple of times.
Ortiz hits one high and deep to right towards the corner. It is number 400 for David Ortiz. Out of the yard to right field, and Big Papi's got number 400.
So, yeah, David Ortiz joining the elite club of Major League Baseball players who have hit 400 home runs, just 48 guys before him. And it's funny because I was talking with Gar and my buddy Ron tonight, and we were kind of saying, like, of all the guys that have hit 400 home runs in my, childhood and adult memory, David Ortiz is the first guy that I kind of feel like, yeah, I've seen most of those 400 home runs because he played for the Red Sox for all those years. He's been on TV so much. It just feels like I've seen most of those home runs. Kind of an interesting thing. Not without controversy. I mean, he had several years there where he just could not put a good stroke on the ball. It's rumored that his name was on the Mitchell report of players that have done steroids. And, it's kind of interesting the context of Big Papi hitting this 400th home run. In the same week, Hall of Famer, Mr. October, Reggie Jackson, came out in the media and basically called Alex Rodriguez out, saying, hey, look, he's a known drug user. He's a known performance-enhancing drug user and offender. And so can we trust his stats? I don't think that he should be in the Hall of Fame. This is Reggie Jackson. This is Mr. October. This is, prior to the Yankees, this guy, and he's calling out a current Yankee player. That's big. And in the context of David Ortiz hitting his 400th home run, you got to wonder, if his name was on that Mitchell report, maybe he's really somewhere around 320. Maybe he's somewhere around 280. Who knows? Who really knows? But it seems like we've lived in this world of cynical, opinions and never giving a player the benefit of the doubt. Seems like we've been here for a long time now. For like a decade now. Ever since like 2002. You remember 2002? A decade ago? I really hope that at some point in time we're going to be able to get back to just giving the guys the benefit of the doubt. Like how many, let me ask you this. How many would Ortiz have to hit before you'd say, yeah, those numbers are legitimate? Because you can't be juicing for this long in the game. You can't be on steroids that long. They would catch you if you were on for that long. Sooner or later, you get caught. So, I don't know. It's kind of interesting to me. I think it's a shame that's always the topic of conversation. Big topic of conversation in Los Angeles. In basketball, some news. Hasn't been great run for the Dodgers here lately. They've had a rough go of it. But basketball fans in LA, they got some good news this week over the 4th of July holiday. Former Phoenix Suns point guard Steve Nash has been reportedly traded to the Lakers in exchange for, I think, a couple of draft picks, a Gatorade cooler, a couple of icy hot patches, those kind that Shaq used to wear in those commercials where he'd put put it on and then dunk the ball in a nondescript jersey. I kind of feel like if you're going to wear a nondescript jersey in a commercial, I'd rather just see you in like sweats and a t-shirt, because it kind of draws attention to the fact that you have on a nondescript jersey when you're in fact wearing a nondescript jersey. Or you know what, even better, wear like the Washington, like the Washington Generals from like wear a jersey I recognize but that nobody cares about. Like, oh yeah, those are the guys that the Harlem Globetrotters always boat race. Wear something. The blank white jersey, not doing it for me. But anyways, that's off the point altogether. Steve Nash to the Lakers, and all the talk in Los Angeles. Oh, the Lakers. Oh, Lakers are we're gonna win it all. Kobe's winning another championship. Oh, the Lakers. Which is cool. I mean, I get it. It's an exciting move. I think it's very interesting on a couple of different fronts. First of all, I think it's interesting from the standpoint that the Lakers just traded to get a 38-year-old point guard on their team, and that's still considered an upgrade from where they were at. Okay, just process this with me. Just drink this in and just think it all the way through. He's 38. I mean, in NBA years, that's like 59. I mean, that's old in NBA years. That's old. There's no Gordie Howes of the NBA. There's nobody playing for 4 and 5 decades. It doesn't happen anymore. 38 is old. And he's still an upgrade from Derek Fisher, from Ramon Sessions, from any Jordan Farmar, any of the number of guys that you want to run off that have played point guard for the Lakers in recent memory. Now, Laker fan would say, oh, but, they ran Phil Jackson, the triangle offense. You don't really have to have a point guard in triangle offense. That's cool. That's fine. Yes, offensively, you can get away with not having a point guard. The problem that the Lakers have had for years, though, none more apparent than the Derek Fisher years. Yeah, that's fine on offense. The problem is you still have to guard that other team's point guard on defense. And Fisher just got torched for like 3 years straight. And I kept saying over and over again, defensive liability, this guy's got to go. But there's this love affair with Derek Fisher. I would not be surprised if when Derek Fisher's done in Oklahoma City, I would not be shocked if the Lakers found a way to bring Derek Fisher back. I would not be shocked if they were like, here's your walker, Mr. Fisher. When you're done with the $2 pancake special at the IHOP for the senior citizens, come on over and play point guard for us. I would not be shocked. I could see Derek Fisher, old and gray, playing point guard for the Lakers because that's how much this city loves him. He could literally never move off the center court dot, and this town would still just clamor for Derek Fisher. Oh, Derek. Oh, the shot. San Antonio. My point is, Steve Nash to any other team in the NBA, not an upgrade. I hate to say it. Steve Nash is a very good point guard. But any other elite team in the NBA you want to talk about, I'm not calling Steve Nash an upgrade. It's a lateral move in a lot of places. But look, what this does for the Lakers is this gets them out of that first round exit perdition that they've been in for the last couple of years now. It does make them a little bit more legitimate threat. In my mind, it kind of puts them in the same arena as San Antonio. It's going to be interesting to see what they do with the other players on the roster and what they have left and what they need, right? Because, look, right now you got the lineup of Kobe, Andrew Bynum, Pau Gasol, Steve Nash, and then, anybody in the 5 spot, just whoever. That's your squad. I'm not as concerned about that as I am about what happens with those other guys, those other 7 guys on the bench. Who are those guys? Which brings me to my next point. You know, Steve Nash has some kind of crazy looking hair. And he's got a kind of crazy look. Not a bad look, just a very, like crazy kind of white trash Canadian kind of look is what he's got going. If I'm going to describe it, I'm going to say he looks like a Canadian meth head. That's kind of it. I know he's not. He's a great guy. I get it. But if you just size him up on looks, if you put that guy in a flannel shirt and some blue jeans and he didn't shave for a day and a half, you'd be like, that's a meth head. So in my mind, now that he's here, I really think the Lakers have to get rid of Steve Blake. It seems like you should only be able to have like one guy on your team that looks like he could also be a meth head at a time. There should be a limit of like one only. And Steve Blake doesn't even look like you would have to change a lot. Like literally, if you just put a shirt on him instead of a basketball jersey and he walked out of Staples Center in downtown LA, people might be like, hey bro, you want to do some lines? Like he looks like a meth head. And now with Nash, something's got to give is all I'm saying. Something has got to give. A lot of trade talk in the NBA, a lot of stuff kind of coming to a head. The Dwight Howard Orlando Magic situation. Could this get any more ridiculous? And if you listen to me, you know that I am typically pro player in most situations where there's a dispute between ownership and players. I'm coming down on the side of the guy who has, 8 to 12 years to earn his entire living for a career versus multi-billionaire owner in most cases. Most of the time I'm coming down on the side of the player, on the working class guy, it's impossible to side with Dwight Howard. Who's on Dwight Howard's side right now? Besides his mom and his agent, seriously. Who's on his side? So let me get this straight. No, I don't want to be traded. I'll sign the extension clause and hang around. Now I do want to be traded. Oh, by the way, I don't have a no trade clause in my contract, so you can technically trade me anywhere. The problem is, now Dwight Howard says, I'll only accept a trade to one team. Which one team? Well, he's not saying. But he'll only accept a trade to one team. And apparently that team's Brooklyn was what the rumor was. Well, now Brooklyn spent a ton of money in the last couple of days bringing guys in. And now people are wondering, maybe Brooklyn doesn't have the money to get this done. So then some logical destinations start to pop up. You have your Los Angeleses of the world. Yeah, you've got your different places. You've even got places like Houston showing an interest. So now the Magic are in the unenviable position of trying to trade a guy who's basically said, if I go anywhere but this one team, I'm not going to stay for longer than a year. You're basically getting me for 1 year. And now other teams are going, yeah, that doesn't really work for us. We don't want to give up a whole bunch of stuff to rent you for 1 year, and maybe we do well. I'm not down with that. So it's a big mess. And I think ultimately Dwight Howard's going to wind up someplace like Houston, where he doesn't want to be. But the Magic have no choice at this point. And this is impossible to be on Dwight Howard's side. The Nets are making some moves, though. And if the Nets could find a way to clear some cap space and get Dwight Howard, I think that could be a big deal. Joe Johnson's there. Darren Williams is still there. You bring in Dwight Howard, and that's a legitimate 3-player blockbuster type of move. I'm not ready to put them with the likes of the Thunder or with the likes of the Heat by any stretch of the imagination, but you're getting there. So that's it. I hope you guys stayed safe on the holiday. Hope you have a great weekend. And whatever you do, keep right.
You have been listening to the Sports Underground Podcast. And you know we always welcome your take. So hit Baron up on Twitter at BGraft. That's BGRAFFT. And you can find the Sports Underground on Facebook. So go ahead and like it. If you want to download, hit us up on iTunes. And remember, come back again next time and get some.